Ever-increasing passenger numbers placed big demands on the world's most popular air routes, especially across the Atlantic. In the past, regulators had insisted airlines fly aircraft with at least 3 engines when traveling over long bodies of water. But the development of better engines and more sophisticated aeroplanes eventually made 2-engine long-distance travel feasible. A new standard was introduced known as Extended Range Twin-Engine Operation, or ETOPS. It allowed twin-engined aircraft to fly long-distance routes if they complied with certain technical specifications and had sufficient diversion options in case of emergency. However, several Boeing 737 scares in the late 1980s caused some worries about operating the twin-engine jet over water. On the 29th of April 1988, 94 passengers and crew on a 737-297, operated by Aloha Airlines, had a remarkable escape after the fuselage covering part of the cabin was ripped open. At the time, Flight 243 was cruising at 24,000 feet on its way to Honolulu. Amazingly, the only fatality was a flight attendant who was sucked out of the airplane. Captain Robert Schornsteiner and First Officer Madeline Tompkins immediately began an emergency descent, while the terrified passengers braced themselves for an emergency landing.
And when I looked forward, all we could see was a blue sky, where about a third of the roof, or the roof of the airplane, was completely gone. And we all thought we were going to die.
Passenger Dan Denon was amazed at how calm people were.
The plane lost a lot of altitude, and I was sitting in a window seat, and I could see that he still had control of the plane, and he was able to maintain control of the airplane, and all the passengers, it was unbelievable. Everybody kept their cool. There wasn't any panic. One flight attendant, she really kept her cool, going up and down, helping people. Everybody got on their life jackets, and we were down with our heads bent forward, and we came over land, and we survived. Thank God.
The pilots brought the 737 down safely at Kaului Airport, Maui. Experts said the captain acted by the book and showed great piloting skill.
The first thing he needs to do is to get the airplane down from high altitude very rapidly, because there are 2 things that will harm the passengers. Lack of oxygen, because the air is so thin, and extreme cold. So he has to get it down, and he has to get it down with some skill, because the strength of the airplane's hull has been considerably reduced, so he has to handle it with great gentleness.
The pilot was also lucky. The section of roof that peeled off was behind the cockpit, where crucial electrical equipment is housed, and away from the control wires beneath the floor. If they had been damaged, he would have lost control. Investigators later determined that the accident was caused by metal fatigue around rivets joining sections together, aggravated by corrosion caused by condensation. The unusually high number of takeoff and landing cycles the 19-year-old airplane had performed during its island-hopping duties around Hawaii aggravated these problems.
Aloha flies island-hopping routes, which are very, very quick, very short, and a considerable number of trips. The thing which predisposes to metal fatigue more than anything else is the number of flight cycles, the number of flights it does, not necessarily the number of hours, the number of flights.
In January 1989, a 737-400 crash-landed on Britain's M1 motorway at Kegworth, killing 47 of the 126 people on board. An in-flight engine failure, usually a routine matter in a twin-engine jet, became a catastrophe when the pilot switched off the wrong engine. British Midland Flight 092 was climbing through 28,300 feet when a fan blade on the left engine ruptured, causing a stream of smoke, a burning smell, and severe vibrations. Believing, wrongly, that the 400 variant was the same as previous 737s, Captain Kevin Hunt turned off the right engine when he smelled smoke, not realizing the aircraft had been modified to bleed air from both engines. Coincidentally, the faulty engine quietened down, so the pilots didn't realize they had shut down the wrong one until they increased power to land and lost both engines. Investigators found that both passengers and cabin crew knew which engine was causing the problems, but the information was not relayed to the cockpit. Communication procedures were subsequently improved. An inquest held the following year found that neither Hunt nor First Officer David McClelland had received any simulator training for the 737-400. The in-flight failure of the CFM56-3C1 engine was of great concern to investigators, more so when two other incidents were recorded in similar circumstances 6 months later. There was also close examination of the way the pilots responded to the emergency. Captain Jack Jessup, another 737 pilot, was asked if it was possible for a pilot to accidentally switch off the wrong engine.
I would hope not. I can't really make a comment on that. I don't think I would do that. No.
Just a few days after the Kegworth crash, 737s were in the headlines again for engine-related trouble. This time, a JT-8D Pratt & Whitney that fell off a 737-200 as the aeroplane was taking off from Chicago's O'Hare Airport. The Piedmont Airways 737 had just taken off and was 1,000 feet above the ground when its right-hand engine fell off, leaving an empty space under the wing. The pilot was able to land the plane safely back in Chicago on just one engine. The American-made Pratt & Whitney jet engine fell into a field half a mile west of the airport and broke into two main pieces. There were no injuries.
Hit the ground, broke up to maybe, 3 large pieces.
Did the pilot seem to be fighting for control of the airplane?
No. Seemed like everything was going pretty well with him. Just a lot of smoke, a lot of thick white smoke.
It was less than a year since the 737 had lost an engine in similar circumstances, so additional engine checks were ordered.
I think it's definitely something to worry about, that something which looks almost identical has happened again, despite these checks. The point is that we don't yet know whether it is identical. We do know that a bolt has failed in this particular case. Whether this is a result of a maintenance fault or whether this is a result of some kind of design error, that we have yet to find out.
Do you think that the public will soon lose confidence in the safety of flying twin-engine jets over the Atlantic?
I think that the public are getting worried about twin-engine flights over the Atlantic. They were worried in the first place, but they didn't say anything. Now I think that public concern is going to become quite apparent to the Federal Aviation Administration and our own CAA, and I think that the administrations will have to act.
And that will mean banning twin-engine flights over the Atlantic?
No, I don't think that this will mean banning twin-engine flight over the Atlantic. It will mean that they will not be allowed to fly as far away from operating airports as they are now.
The investigation found that bolts holding the engine in place had failed, and the National Transportation Safety Board recommended that airlines increase their inspections of bolts on other 737 jets. A new NTSB order told airlines to conduct ultrasonic inspections of the bolts every 300 flights instead of every 600 as previously required. Meanwhile, French engine manufacturer Snecma probed the issues behind the CFM56 engine, following the Boeing company's recommendation that all its 737-400 aircraft be grounded, pending modifications to CFM56 series 3C engines.
We'd had 3 significant failures of the fan blades in the engines in only 31,000 engine hours. And that's an unacceptable rate for a failure as significant as that. So we believed until we're in a position to know how to rectify the problem or control it, the only correct answer is to ground the aircraft.
At the Paris Air Show, executives from engine maker Snecma were confident of finding and fixing the fault.
There has been an incident. We take care of it immediately to fix it very clear. A very few number of engines are concerned, and it will be fixed as soon as possible and very rapidly. That's it. And I think that nobody should push too much on this.
But grounding the planes delayed thousands of holidaymakers, as most of the suspect engines were fitted to holiday charter planes.
I think it's going to be some time, and I mean months, before they find out exactly what the problem is. What I think the Civil Aviation Authority is going to be working on with the manufacturer and the airlines is what they can do to get the aeroplanes safely back into the skies with a reduced chance of something like this happening.
It was finally determined that the fan blades of the engine that had been uprated to service the new 400 variant were subjected to abnormal amounts of vibration when operating at high power settings above 25,000 feet. Because it was an upgrade to an existing engine, it had only been tested in laboratory conditions. Procedures were subsequently changed so that any significantly redesigned turbofan engine is tested under representative flight conditions. In the late 1980s, a dramatic rise in air travel saw Britain's air traffic controllers raising concern about the number of aircraft near misses taking place in the skies. The Thatcher government introduced changes to air traffic control procedures and promised the Civil Aviation Authority would make public the results of its investigations into near-air misses. But controllers said inquiries still wouldn't be impartial.
The CAA is not an independent party. It is responsible for the air traffic services, so when it investigates controller incidents, it investigates itself.
However, the CAA disagreed.
The group that investigates air misses is completely independent. British Airways is on it, Guild of Air Pilots and Air Navigators, IATA, a whole range of totally independent people who investigate independently. They always have been independent. We're now going to be making them appear more independent for the public to realise this is the case.
For some time, the controllers had been complaining of undermanning, poor equipment and overcrowded airspace. They stressed it was crucially important that an air traffic simulator be installed at London Control, saying such equipment was first recommended 25 years before. Evidence to go before the Commons Select Committee painted a gloomy picture of increasing air traffic congestion and the dangers that went with it. In 1977, commercial airliners in UK airspace flew 400,000 hours. By 1986, the figure was 570,000 hours. As a result, according to the main air traffic controllers union, their members were overworked and harassed to cut flight delays. They claimed safety standards had dropped to cater for increasing workloads.
I don't think I have to worry about a mid-air collision tomorrow. It's always a problem. But 2 or 3 years from now, if we don't take action, we'll have 25% more traffic, and beyond, that will be beyond anybody's control.
Air traffic controller Jim Cousins was so concerned about a possible mid-air disaster that he quit his job.
Well, I think all the signs are there. I think anybody who's not got a vested interest could look there and see the same kind of embryonic signs as you could have seen leading towards the King's Cross problem or the Zeebrugge disaster. All the signs are there. People have been warning of them, but nobody's really taking much notice.
The Civil Aviation Authority accepted there were air traffic problems to be resolved, but its message to the public was that the skies were becoming safer.
The system is in fact getting safer. We intend to keep it that way. I personally fly frequently, so do many controllers, and I encourage them not to feel in any way endangered.
Britain's air traffic problems continued to build, however. Every year, thousands of frustrated holidaymakers endured long delays at major airports. And with passenger numbers predicted to double within 20 years, better air traffic organisation and a new runway became matters of urgency. But travellers were warned that there was no quick-fix solution to the problems bedeviling Britain's aviation industry.
There are no quick solutions to the whole problem.
So the agony is set to continue for at least 10 years?
I expect some agony, yes.
The CAA said that somehow there had to be a new runway to cater for the increased demand, a decision that had to be made urgently. Market. Their worst-case view was that from the end of the century, 17 million passengers wouldn't be able to fly from London. The aviation sector continued to expand and to cater for increased passenger demand. But as well as scheduled flights, there was the occasional unexplained visitor, as seen by the pilot and co-pilot of a Boeing 737 coming in to land at Manchester Airport. The 737 was on its final approach when the flight crew experienced their close encounter. The pilots described how they saw an illuminated object fly down the right-hand side of the aircraft at high speed. They said it was wedge-shaped and made no sound as it passed. It had a black stripe down the side and had a number of small white lights, rather like a Christmas tree.
The most unusual thing about this sighting is that it was seen by two expert witnesses who would know exactly what kind of aircraft should be using a busy international airport like this one.
British Airways said the report it received from the CAA offered no explanation for such an aircraft being in that airspace.
It is literally an unidentified flying object.
Well, that has sort of connotations of little green men and things. I would say it was unexplained air miss.
There was another eyewitness to the same mysterious events that night. Mark Lloyd had been driving past the airport when he saw triangular aircraft darting around the sky.
He was able to move sideways, right and left, and tilt over backwards, do manoeuvres that no aircraft in this country could do them sort of manoeuvres.
British Airways said the matter was taken very seriously and commended the pilots for reporting it. Technology and familiarity took some of the adventure out of modern aviation, but there were still pilots who wanted to test the envelope. One of them was self-made millionaire Steve Fawcett, who became well known for his world records in balloons, sailboats, gliders and powered aircraft.
Yes, it's not only a solo flight, but it's in an unpressurized capsule, so this is doing it without pressurization, and I'm out here exposed to the elements, and this is one of the major things I have to deal with is the altitude.
In 2000, Fawcett set a new round-the-world speed record for a medium-weight plane. It took him and co-pilots Alex Tye and Darren Atkins 41 hours to fly the twin-engine Cessna Citation on an eastward route around the globe.
It took us 41 hours and 13 minutes to fly around the world. And the previous record by Edgar Kaiser from Canada, I think he took about 47 hours and 53 minutes. But ultimately, it's the average speed that counts for the record. Our average speed was 559 miles an hour, approximately, compared to his 490 miles an hour.
Fawcett said the trip was everything he'd imagined it would be.
It's just a great experience. There's a great romance to flying around the world and doing it faster than anybody else has done it in that medium. And so this is a very happy experience for us.
The trio made 6 layovers during their journey, refueling in Bermuda, Morocco, Egypt, India, Japan and Midway Island before landing in Los Angeles.
People like Steve Fawcett do drive these things. It costs an immense amount of money, A, to have an aircraft like this to be able to do it in, and also the time and the inclination to want to do it. So, yeah, the driving force is people like Steve. The record's there to be set, but not many people want to get out of bed and go and challenge those records most of the time. It's very exciting doing this sort of thing, but it's only people like Steve that can afford to do it, unfortunately.
Edgar Kaiser, who flew from Vancouver, British Columbia, in a Hawker 800, had set the previous record for a medium-weight aeroplane in 1988. 3 years later, Fawcett was flying a very different aircraft in the Swiss Alps. The record-breaking balloonist came to Chateau d'Eux to take part in the village's annual balloon festival and reunite with some old friends.
Landing. Do you imagine how embarrassing it is if we are in the balloon without you and we have a terrible landing?
Oh, I think it would be wonderful. It's a reunion for me. My friends Bertrand Piccard and Brian Jones were in competition with me to be the first to fly around the world. They won that competition, but then I made the first solo flight around the world, so we've shared this experience together, and it's great to be back together with them.
Fawcett already had his sights set on another adventure.
Well, in fact, I'm continuing with the weather. I'm flying gliders now, and I want to fly a glider into the stratosphere. I've made some attempts, and I'll make more attempts in March in California.
Fawcett's 2002 record-breaking solo balloon flight of 33,195 kilometers took him 13 days, 8 hours, and 33 minutes. It was his 6th attempt at the record, and he took out a $500,000 contingency insurance policy that ended up paying him $3 million for the successful flight, an amount that covered the cost of the quest. After conquering the world of balloons, Fawcett turned his attention to high-flying gliders. His aim? to fly a glider plane higher than anyone had before, almost into space.
We want to fly a glider into the stratosphere. This has never been done. In fact, we think there's a possibility to fly a glider to 19,000 meters.
The team headed to El Calafate in Argentinian Patagonia because its winds make it one of the best places in the world for gliding. To survive a flight at such high altitudes, pilots need special equipment.
In order to fly more than 13,000 meters, you have to wear a full pressure suit. This is a spacesuit, so we are wearing spacesuits. They are provided to us by NASA.
Known as the Perlan project, the challenge had two aims: to break a gliding world record and conduct scientific research for NASA. Fawcett's co-pilot had the perfect credentials for both tasks.
My flying partner is Einar Enevoldsen, and he used to be a NASA test pilot in airplanes. But he's also a very good glider pilot, and he has originated this project.
Fawcett and Enevoldsen planned to ride the wave of wind that blows over the Andes. They hoped the wind would lift the glider to an altitude of about 30 kilometers, 3 times higher than aeroplanes fly, and twice the current record. They flew from Calafate Airport near the Chilean border. A glider does not have its own engine, so it is towed behind a regular airplane for takeoff. The mission's success relied on special atmospheric conditions, strong polar vortex winds combined with the high mountains. The vortex reaches speeds of about 180 kilometers per hour. As it rises, it creates a powerful updraft high into the stratosphere. But that day, it wasn't to be. Hoisted on an inferior airwave, the glider only reached 32,000 feet. Fawcett and Enevoldsen brought the glider in for a safe landing, where it was towed off the runway and taken away for repairs and cleaning. But despite the unsuccessful attempt, the team was not disheartened. The following year, they made another attempt and reached the record altitude.
Now, where are your glasses?
It would be fun if it was too easy.
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, it's not easy.
With his love of records and extreme flying, it wasn't surprising that Fawcett teamed up with another great adventurer, Britain's Richard Branson. The pair had previously ballooned together, and Branson put £1 million into the Global Flyer Aviation Challenge, an attempt to fly solo around the world non-stop.
As an airline, being able to develop a plane that is capable of flying around the world using the latest technology and the latest composites, we believe could be pioneering aviation for the future.
Designed by aviation legend Bert Rutan, who also created the Spaceship One rocket plane, Global Flyer burned less fuel per mile than a Mini Cooper. Made entirely from lightweight composite material, the single-engine turbofan jet weighed just over 22,000 pounds and had a wingspan of 114 feet.
This plane will fly around the world, if it's successful, only using 9 tons of fuel. Our other planes would use about 1,500 tons of fuel. So it shows that the enormous leap forward in technology.
With so many world records under his belt, Fawcett believed he was the perfect pilot for the project.
I think my past experience is essential because I have to fly solo. I have to have the experience of doing all the functions, the navigation, the flying, and the endurance of doing something on my own for over 3 days.
Fawcett felt a successful flight would have a major impact on the world of aviation.
I think it's a major goal. I think it's one of the most important things in airplane aviation that has not been done yet. And I think it's something that, if done, it'll be a milestone in aviation history.
The team hoped that Global Flyer would inspire airlines to develop more fuel-efficient commercial aircraft because of its revolutionary design.
It is an extreme airplane. It's the Voyager aircraft, which
flew around the world on a propeller flight with a team. Dick Rutan and Gina Yeager was a big step forward. It was able to carry 72% of its weight in fuel. This one is 82%. It's unprecedented in aircraft design.
But the flight time of around 80 hours is a big ask for a pilot.
It's an endurance test. I mean, I have to stay healthy and be able to fly this, most of all. I'm concerned about it becoming too cold in the cockpit. At the altitudes I'll be flying, which will be mostly at 45,000 feet. I'm concerned about the fuel temperatures getting too cold and that fuel might not flow properly to the engine.
On a test flight, Global Flyer VS-101 flew above the Mojave Desert for more than 3 hours, loaded with only a fraction of the fuel it would be carrying for the attempt. For the actual flight, the aircraft carried 18,000 pounds of fuel on board, more than 4 times the weight of the 3,577-pound plane.
Yeah, obviously the dangers are that in big turbulence up there with all that fuel that they could break up. I mean, obviously, hopefully it won't, but if it did, we have big drogues on the plane, which will hopefully slow the plane up so that Steve can get out of it and parachute out.
Fawcett cruised at a height of about 45,000 feet for most of the flight, relying on an autopilot system when he nodded off for a few minutes at a time. He lost his navigation systems early on, but fortunately they came back online before he flew over the Atlantic Ocean. Despite an inexplicable fuel loss, Fawcett piloted the Global Flyer around the world non-stop, landing safely at Salina, Kansas, where he had taken off 67 hours earlier. He received a hero's welcome. While Branson left the heroics to Fawcett on this occasion, the flamboyant entrepreneur has never been short of screen time himself. During the 1980s and 90s, Branson built up the Virgin Group to include Virgin Atlantic Airlines, Virgin Mobile Phones, Virgin Trains, and now Virgin Galactic, a new space tourism company. Founded as a low-cost airline, Virgin Atlantic gained a reputation for stylish, forward-looking travel and good customer service. However, the recession of the early 1990s threatened to pull the company under. Despite opposition from British Airways, the British government intervened to give Virgin Atlantic access to Heathrow Airport, a decision that helped save Branson's business.
The battles that we've had to obtain the right slots and access to airports is more than well known, and our views on open skies and real competition are very, very strident and haven't changed. And that's been the big battle, about how a little company punches in that very closed political arena, and we've had to work really, really hard at that.
Branson himself works tirelessly to promote the airline. To celebrate Virgin Atlantic's 21st birthday, Branson pulled in some star power, dressing actress Pamela Anderson in the company's trademark red and parading her on the wing of an aircraft. The stunt was so successful that he repeated it 4 years later, this time accompanied by model Kate Moss. As usual, the cameras couldn't get enough. Once his business empire was established, Branson was able to indulge in another great passion, pursuing boating and aviation records. In a canny marketing move, his record attempts have been closely tied to the Virgin brand, generating millions of dollars in free publicity every time he hits the headlines. Branson's substantial charity efforts have been equally successful in generating publicity. In 2002, he became the patron of Britain's first nationwide charity foundation for air ambulance services across Britain.
I've been rescued for 4 occasions by helicopters in various mad escapades out of the sea, and I felt I needed to give something back and say thank you. And London, believe it or not, did not have a fully funded air ambulance service.
More than 7,000 people a year are rushed to hospital by air ambulance, with every helicopter saving about 20 lives a year. The London Air Ambulance is particularly important as it can get people to hospital quickly, avoiding the capital's notorious traffic jams. Not all adventurers come from Britain or America. Indian business tycoon and maverick aviator Vijay Singania made world headlines in 2005 when he broke the world record for highest altitude gained traveling in a hot air balloon. 67-year-old Singania dubbed the feat Mission Impossible before he left from the Indian city of Mumbai. In the days leading up to the project, Singania underwent a stringent training regime involving sessions in a pressure chamber and stints within the claustrophobic simulated pressurized cabin. Andy Elson and Colin Prescott, two balloon experts from England who also headed the technical team, put the regime together. I have done many new things in the field of aviation, and this also is a new milestone. God willing, I will do more. It was the third and greatest aviation record set by the successful businessman, who in 1994 won the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale gold medal, considered to be the world's most coveted aviation title. He hoped to put the balloon on display after the mission was over, as he did with an earlier record-breaking aircraft.
My microlight, which I did the first Guinness record in 1988, I gifted it to the Nehru Science Center, which all of you are welcome to go and see. And I was hoping that maybe I can put my capsule and some portions of the balloon.
Singania reached 69,000 feet, beating the previous record by 500 feet. In the tradition of America's famous barnstormers, daredevil aviators continue to thrill the crowds, this time at the Red Bull Air Race in Monument Valley, Utah. The Air Race series started in 2001 with the aim of pitting the world's best pilots against each other. The aviators fly through an obstacle course at high speeds, a task that requires great precision and skill. Each pilot's time is recorded and points are awarded to the top 9 competitors. At the end of the year's championship series, the pilot with the most points becomes the world champion.
Number 19, Steve, yeah, clear into the box, smoke on.
But not surprisingly, the races are fraught with danger. Britain's Steve Jones was lucky to escape with his life when he crashed heavily into an air gate just a few meters above the ground. His plane was slightly damaged and he was forced to retire from the race. It was a frightening experience for the veteran pilot, and he was annoyed with himself for making a basic error.
Of looking inside briefly to try and sort it out, and try and sort out the propeller control. Big mistake. Resulted in a major pylon hit. You know, it's certainly the worst pylon hit I've seen in this sport, and not very clever at all, really. So I'm annoyed with myself. I'm very embarrassed to make such a stupid error, but you know, very, very lucky that I'm still here.
Peter Bezenyi of Hungary eventually won the event with a flawless run at speeds of up to 400 kilometers an hour and forces of up to 10 G through the spectacular 8 airgate course straddling the Utah-Arizona border. Bezenyi's time of 59.87 minutes edged out another Briton, Peter Bonhomme, who trailed by 0.97 seconds through the circuit made treacherous by the 5,200-foot altitude.
Well done, Peter.
One of the world's greatest aviation legends was born from an unlikely source. Charles Stuart Rolls and Henry Royce founded the Rolls-Royce Company in 1906. It went on to become one of the world's most famous car manufacturers.
In 1904, an aristocrat called the Honourable Charles Rolls was looking for a good car to take him around the continent. He met this engineer, Henry Royce, who was from Manchester. They met in a Manchester hotel and they got on so well they decided to make cars together. So in 1906, they were making their first Rolls-Royce. It was the Silver Ghost. In 1907, that was known as the Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost, and that's when the Rolls-Royce Motor Company really started to get going. They'd been making cars under other labels before.
But it wasn't just cars that made Rolls-Royce famous. In 1914, the company started an Aero engine manufacturing branch. This side of the business soon became a major player in the aviation industry, both civil and military.
In the last 20 years, it's quadrupled its share of the civil engine business. It's become the world's largest marine propulsion company. It's a very, very big player in defence aviation, and it's in the oil, gas and power industry. It's become a truly global power systems company.
However, although Rolls-Royce powered through the 1950s and 60s, largely due to favourable contracts with government-sponsored aircraft designers, the engine manufacturer found itself in deep trouble due to problems with its RB211 turbofan engine. Built for Lockheed's L-1011 TriStar jet airliner, the RB211 engine caused so many delays and extra expenses that the company went bankrupt. Britain's Conservative government was forced to nationalise the business and pump in £48 million to keep it afloat. The three-engine jet finally made its first flight from Palmdale, California in 1970. The three massive Rolls-Royce turbofan engines gave the airliner a cruising speed of 600 miles an hour. Unlike the development of its engines, the TriStar's first flight went exactly to plan, and Lockheed and Rolls-Royce chiefs were jubilant at its success. Particularly noticeable was the quietness of the engines as the airliner lifted off the runway. The engines produced more than twice as much thrust as the first generation of fan jets. After the 2-hour flight, Rolls-Royce program director Rex Nicholson said he had the utmost confidence that his firm would be able to carry out its commitments in supplying engines. Flight commander H.B. Dees told reporters the flight went even better than expected. British Airways, Trans World Airways, Delta Airlines and Eastern Airlines all put the TriStar into service, and 250 of them were manufactured. Also been a bestseller for Rolls-Royce, with AirAsia X the latest customer to put in an order. Combined with the additional 10 Trent-powered A330s which AirAsia plans to add to its fleet of 15, the deal will be worth up to $1.8 billion. Low-cost, long-haul operator AirAsia X plans to use the new aircraft in its expansion into European routes. Environmental considerations are becoming more and more important for aviation manufacturers. In 2008, Rolls-Royce and its partners invested about £800 million on research and development, two-thirds of which has been devoted to further improving the environmental aspects of its products. In 2009, Cathay Pacific became the first airline to order special enhanced performance kits for its Trent 700 engines. The upgrades will take place over the next 2 years, reducing fuel costs and CO2 emissions. It's estimated that CO2 emissions from each aircraft will be reduced by up to 720 tons every year. Engine fuel burn will be reduced by more than 1%. The upgrade kits can be fitted during routine shop visits. As well as the big plane market, Rolls-Royce has been focused on designing and manufacturing engines for business jets, such as the Gulfstream G650. Design and manufacture is carried out in the company's German factory, but testing also takes place at the Rolls-Royce outdoor jet engine facility at NASA's John C. Stennis Space Center in Mississippi, or the company's Derby headquarters. New engines are tested for their ability to cope with bird strike, ice, hail and water ingestion. They are also subjected to the critical fan blade test, where a fan blade is deliberately released. So, are there any other options if you don't want to use an engine to move a jet? They found one at Dulles International Airport. At an annual event hosted by the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, 35 teams made up of airline workers and local law enforcement officials raced the clock to pull a Boeing 727 along the ground.
Working around airports for about 30 years, I also had an opportunity to see planes being moved by these tugs, and I says, gee, I think it could be done by people. And that's where the idea came from.
Although it's fun for a good cause, rivalries abound on the tarmac. These contestants from Airbus were pleased with the results.
We beat Boeing. We beat them last year, too.
Personally, it comes down to technique. We had all of us mostly are weight-trained people, and the main thing is using your hips and your legs and lining up on the rope properly.
Teams donate $1,000 each to support the Special Olympics Summer Games held in Richmond, Virginia. Competition was fierce, with the lucky winners taking home trophies. And the winners? United Airlines workers beat the Secret Service in a record time of 6.21 seconds. Over in India, Mumbai locals were astonished to find a Boeing 737 abandoned on a busy road. For 5 days, the airplane blocked traffic and provided an interesting landmark. The decommissioned aircraft, with its engine, wings and tail removed, was being taken to New Delhi. But the driver, after taking a wrong turn, couldn't maneuver the plane around and fled the scene. According to various reports, it was supposed to be used at a flight training academy in the national capital. The plane quickly became the center of attraction in western Mumbai, with people flocking from all over the city to take a closer look. However, for Ramji Tapar, who runs a restaurant in the area, the plane was causing a nuisance, as it was parked right in front of his shop. When we saw it for the first time, there was no one in the truck. It has been here for 5 days now. It has been here since Sunday. It's causing traffic jams in the area. People climb upon it and crowd around it. And Tapar wasn't the only one annoyed by the intrusion. Commuters using the road now faced traffic jams every day. Traffic has been getting clogged in the area, and commuting through this stretch has become difficult. Onlookers are not leaving despite police action. No one is attending to the traffic here. Only the beat constables are coming. None of the senior officers have come. But others found the aeroplane's appearance very exciting. It feels great to see an airplane from such close quarters for the first time. A vast number of India's billion people have never even been close to an airplane, let alone inside one. So a former airline engineer decided to change that for some of New Delhi's slum kids. He brought home a 280-seat Airbus A300 and set it up in his backyard. Every week, hundreds of children come to visit. After checking in their bags and being issued with boarding passes, they are welcomed on board by smiling air hostesses. A public address system reminds them to fasten their seat belts, while aircraft owner B.C. Gupta's wife Nirmal Jindal takes them through detailed safety instructions. Bahadur Chand Gupta fulfilled a decade-old dream when he bought the decommissioned Indian Airlines plane in 2003 and cut it into 4 parts. After nearly 1.5 years of working on it, he managed to put it all together in Dwarka, just a stone's throw away from Delhi's international airport. AJ, the son of a cobbler, was overwhelmed by the new experience of sitting inside a plane. Every time I used to look at an airplane in the sky, I used to wonder, would I ever get to sit inside one? I am feeling great. I have come to see the aeroplane. I had seen planes from outside only, never from inside. Today I have seen a plane from inside. It is really nice. The plane has been cut down to about 2/3 of its normal length and is supported by thick concrete pillars. A toilet block has been created underneath the tail. Hundreds of children from desperately poor families regularly come to fulfill their wishes on Gupta's plane. Some with their parents, some through their schools, and many through charity organizations.
It is the smile on the face of children, smile on the face of poor and deprived people. They may not have shoes in the feet, but when they come with, such a happy face, the moment they enter in the gate and they see such a huge plane standing in front of them, and they just climb the stairs with such big smile, and they sit and they, their happiness gives me the uttermost pleasure and happiness.
Gupta, who hails from a small village in Haryana, says when he became an aircraft engineer in 1980, he was flooded with a deluge of requests from his fellow villagers wanting him to take them inside an airplane, but was helpless because of security constraints. However, the thought remained with him all these years, and now he can finally fulfill all those dreams.
When they come with a dream actually. They are very from the poor section. Their parents cannot afford any flying, so they want to be in the aircraft, but they cannot pay. So they have some dream, so their dream is fulfilled here.
Indian skies have never been as busy. New airlines, including a slew of budget carriers, have made flying in India more affordable. But even a $20 ticket is too expensive for most Indians. Only 1% of Indians have ever boarded an aircraft. Gupta says he wants to give people from the remaining 99% a chance to see something they probably can never otherwise afford.